second. So you're saying that axolotls in the wild, they got the Benjamin Buttons, where they're just like babies forever.
That's not what Benjamin Button was.
I've never watched the movie. You're telling me that's not what that Brad Pitt movie's about?
Well, Benjamin Button ages in reverse.
Oh, I thought he was just a baby.
I think. I haven't watched it in a really long time. I hope I'm getting that right. I'm going to look it up right now on camera.
Hi, everyone. I am Valerie.
And I'm Ken.
And we are the Facts and the Curious, where we talk about all the cookie facts out there that me or some of you guys might be curious about. So, what weird and wacky and wild little fact are we discussing today?
Today we are talking about animal regeneration. Regeneration in animals.
Oh, and this is so timely because they just released the the announcement for like the new X-Men.
Ah, yes.
And to me, like,
You're
regeneration...
talking about Wolverine.
Exactly. Regeneration in animals is like the X-Men. So I might be an expert in some of this stuff, but you probably know the more biological truths about it.
Yes.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So first let's make sure we know what we're talking about here. I'm not talking about the healing of wounds. Like if you get a cut, your skin will grow to seal the cut and heal it and make new skin. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about advanced, complex regeneration of entire body structures. Like if you remember the conversation we were having to kind of kick this off, was we were talking about starfish growing back entire arms. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. And certain animals can do that, and certain animals can't.
Before you go on, I need to explain what the picture was, because you and I know what the picture was that you showed me. But they don't know. Okay, so my dear husband, by the way, we're married. I don't know if you can tell, but yeah, we've been married now. My husband has this tendency to just show me really wild pictures with no context and no trigger warning. And he once showed me a picture of a starfish, or a few starfish, that had lost a limb. But that limb, not the starfish, that limb had grown back a whole other starfish around that one limb.
So you could tell because the starfish had one really big arm.
Yes.
And then the rest of it was tiny.
Yes. Which is wild to just kind of see, especially if you don't know that starfish do this, right? Because I feel like you would just expect for that starfish to get the arm chopped off, and that's the arm. Goodbye, arm. But does the starfish even know that somewhere out there that arm is growing back another starfish? That arm said, I don't actually need you. I'm a strong, independent arm that don't need no starfish. I'll just grow my own starfish. And it did. And does that make them clones of each other then? Because technically it's the same animal. And why doesn't it grow back 8 different arms? How does it know that it needs a whole body? How does it know that it needs a mouth? And I don't know if they have brains, but you know what I mean? That's wild.
Those are really good questions.
Thank you.
And I'm going to make sure I get to all of those.
Thanks.
So starfish obviously are some of the best animals at this.
Okay.
But there are a lot of animals that do something like this. And as a general rule, the simpler the animal, the easier it is to do this. And it's easier for cold-blooded animals to do this than warm-blooded animals. So let's dive into those two things.
I'm ready.
So I think it's kind of obvious that it would be easier to regenerate structures of a simple animal just because there's not as much to do. There's not as much going on. Mm-hmm. If there's not as many tissues, if the tissues themselves are, not as complicated, then it's easier to reproduce those things. And then as far as, warm-blooded and cold-blooded animals, if you think about this, if you think about that starfish example, you have a starfish growing back from a single arm, but that arm that is eventually going to grow back a new starfish doesn't have a mouth. It doesn't have a digestive system. It doesn't have any way to obtain new energy. So all of the regeneration that is happening until it gets a digestive system is from energy already contained in the cells of that arm.
Hectic. Okay.
And, warm-blooded animals burn a lot more energy all the time by virtue of constantly creating heat.
Right.
So there's less energy available for that kind of thing. There's almost no warm-blooded animals that can do anything like this, but I will talk about a couple exceptions.
So because we're more complex, we've leveled up a little bit more than these other basic animals. That also just means that once we lose a leg, we lose it. Bye. And they get to just copy paste and
Yes.
you know what I mean? It's like, oh, you know what we are? We're like those first video games from back in the 90s where if you died, that was you couldn't come back to that level and be like, let's try again. You know what I mean? You were just done. But the Starfish and all them other fools are like the games these days where it's you can just save where you are real quick. And so the arm saves, where it was developmentally and energy-wise. And then if it happens to die, it just knows, I can just reboot where I saved and start over.
Yeah, and so I will give a little disclaimer.
Okay.
I don't think all starfish species can do this. It's only certain ones.
Oh.
And there was debate for a while for how much of that arm would need to be present for it to generate an entire starfish. And for a while, and by the way, all of the research that I've done, we will have the sources and everything. We'll have a citation in the comments of all of this.
Because we're ethical
so you can
like that.
keep me honest or whatnot. For a while, scientists thought that the arm would at least have to have a portion of the middle part of the starfish, what they call the disc. But they found that, some species didn't even need that. Starfish are really interesting. You asked if they have a brain,
Yes.
and the answer is no.
They don't have a brain?
They don't have a brain. They actually have a copy of all of their major body organs in each arm. So that's one reason why it's so easy for starfish to do this, because if you have an arm, you already have basically every part of the starfish in existence except for the mouth. So it's really important for it to, regenerate that mouth so it can continue consuming things and, regaining energy. But other than that, all its organs are present in a single arm.
You know what's even more incredible about that is that if it accidentally gets a cut, it somehow knows not to grow a whole, because you said it already has a copy of all the DNA or whatever in one arm, and it doesn't get triggered, to grow a whole new starfish by accident.
So it's funny you say that. The scientists can, and okay, another disclaimer, please do not go lopping off body parts of animals to test what we're saying.
Yeah, don't say that.
The studies have been
Valerie
done.
told you that if you cut off a starfish arm, it's fine because it will just grow back another body. It's not that kind of channel.
So you can actually create branched starfish arms by cutting them down the arm, because the each arm
here.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes, because each other side of the arm doesn't know that the other side is still there, so each side of the arm will grow a new half of the arm, and you can make branched.
Wait. So what you're saying is, if this is the starfish, and then I want to cut this, but I end here.
Yeah.
It will grow back
Yeah.
little split.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah.
But pretty cool. Wow. Okay, go on. I'm interested
Yeah.
now.
So some other animals that can do this, and you'll put a picture up, right, of the...
Of course. I must be traumatized with the audience.
There's actually a name for that kind of starfish, by the way, that has regrown from a single arm, but is still growing. It's called a comet.
A comet, like the thing in the sky?
Yeah, because it looks kind of like a
Oh,
comet
it
with one. Yeah,
does. Okay, that was
they call
clever.
it a comet.
Usually, I wonder why people call things what they are called, but the scientists slapped on that one.
Yeah.
Comet makes sense.
So I'll start with like the world champion of regeneration, which is a flatworm called a planarian. If you've taken like high school biology classes, at some point you probably learned about planarians. But in case you don't remember, a lot of them live in the water, but some of them do live on land. They're small. Most of them are I don't know, half an inch to an inch maybe,
Hectic.
and they're flatworms, but then they have like these triangle shaped heads where they like branch off to the side and then come
Okay.
to a point. So the whole worm, when you look at it from top, is actually kind of like arrow shaped.
Okay, I see it.
And planarians you can like chop up into a bunch of pieces, and each piece will grow a new planarian.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're the subject of a lot of studies, and that's why they talk about them in like biology classes a lot, just because they're so interesting and it's a really cool ability.
Yeah.
And I was curious, like, how does like this process of regeneration physically work?
Say that again.
Physically work.
I like it.
Like, what is happening in the body of the animal that lets it regrow these absent tissues? And in the case of most animals that we're going to be talking about today, it has to do, you have a medical background, so you know what stem cells are.
I am a dropout, but yes.
If you don't remember or don't know what stem cells are, you're made of a bunch of different kinds of cells: skin cells and hair cells and muscle cells and bone cells. And all of those cells are shaped different. They look different, they do different things, but all of them contain your entire genetic code. And all of those cells at some point started out as a stem cell, which is a cell that hasn't decided what it wants to be when it grows up yet.
Same.
So the process of a cell, picking of a stem cell, picking if it's going to be a muscle cell or a bone cell or a hair cell, is called differentiation. And for most cells, most of the time, that's the end of the story. It's picked its career path. It's going to go be a skin cell, and that's just what it is. But a lot of these animals are able to de-differentiate those cells back into stem cells to trigger the growth into new things. Planarians are kind of interesting because they have like these packets of stem cells all over their bodies at all times, ready to go for if they were to take an injury, they can spring into action and start regrowing new planarians.
What?
They're called neoblasts. These little groupings of stem cells.
Okay, so obviously this is amazing, but also I'm a little bitter because let me tell you why. You know this story. Recently, actually not very recently, last year, while we were eating a nice little dinner that I'd made from scratch, I bit in too hard and I cracked a whole molar in half. And we paid thousands of dollars for a root canal. And when we celebrated, I decided to make popcorn because I hadn't been able to eat popcorn in a long time. And then what happened? I cracked the exact same tooth on the opposite side of my mouth. And we also had to, well, thank God we were double insured this time, so we didn't have to pay a thing. But still, we inadvertently paid for that tooth. And if I had this, what did you call it? Blastocyst? What did you call it?
Neoblast.
I'm so sorry. I know a blastocyst is something
That is
else.
something else.
Medical community, please don't come for me. I told you I dropped out for a reason. But the neoblast, can you imagine if we just had that? Like, why is it that we just have teeth that grow and they're like, it's all on you, Chief. Good luck for the rest of your 90 years on this planet. Like, don't chip us or anything.
So from personal experience, you've brought up teeth, but we just talked about starfish. Another kind of natural question to be asked could be, wouldn't it be nice if we could regenerate our own limbs?
Yeah.
And that's a frontier of medical science that they're still working on. If they could figure out,
What do you mean still working on?
well, that would be like
Yeah, what do you mean still? We didn't even know they were doing it.
That they absolutely are. It would be groundbreaking if you could, regenerate lost tissue like that. That's like, they're not close, but they absolutely are trying to figure out how to make that work in humans.
That'll be amazing. That'll be amazing. In a dystopian way. That means that they could, like, grab the president. Oh, maybe I should use another example. This is on the internet. Grab,
Sorry, FBI.
yeah,
Sorry,
Mariah
Secret Service.
Carey. And say,
Why
"Whitney."
are you picking famous people with
No.
security teams?
Listen, but at least I know Mariah cannot come for me.
You
know
could
what I
just
mean?
say a hypothetical Jim Bob somewhere.
But it has more, like, stakes if it's, like, Mariah Carey, like the queen of Christmas, Can you imagine? They're like, we need to sell albums. You know what I mean? It's not fair that Mariah gets to capitalize on this whole holiday by herself. If we can just, like, cut off her earlobe, take it down to the labs and then regenerate a whole new Mariah, then they could also do All I Want for Christmas is You. But, it wouldn't be plagiarism because it's a whole other person. Can they do that, or is it just more?
No, they're not. They're not trying to clone the humans. They're trying to make it. They're trying to obsolete amputeeism.
See, the problem is you're too optimistic. They're not trying to clone them yet. But for now, we'll stick with the nice little beautiful. You are a lot more optimistic than I am when it comes to stuff like this.
And to answer one of your previous questions and bring this discussion back a little bit, yes, a starfish or a planarian that gets cut into pieces and regenerates into multiple organisms, they are all technically clones of one another because they have the exact same genetic code.
Okay, thank you for bringing it back. Listen, I'm African, so you have to know a lot of these genetic medical experiments have been done on my people for generations. So I have to ask the difficult question.
Would you like to talk about some more animals that can
Yeah.
undergo regeneration?
Okay, fine.
How about, another one that we talked about for a little bit was lizards. You mentioned accurately that a lizard can disconnect its own tail to escape from a predator.
Yes, it
and then
can.
regrow that tail later. Mm-hmm. That's a form of regeneration that
I guess it is.
uses the, like I explained before, with the cells de-differentiating in the stem cells so that they can heal an injury.
Yes.
That is an example of that. Amphibians are really good at this, especially salamanders.
All amphibians?
I'm not going to go on record and say every single amphibian can do this, but
You don't want the amphibian community coming after you.
but salamanders and newts, and I'll talk about frogs in a minute. But I'm going to start there with salamanders. Maybe I should explain. There's this theory among scientists when it comes to this kind of tissue regeneration, where we're going to look at the salamander, and the salamander can regenerate some parts, and it can't regenerate certain parts. And the theory is that the most important parts for an animal's survival are less likely to be able to regenerate. Because if you lose something absolutely critical, you are probably not going to live long enough to see that part regenerated.
Like, you won't live long enough to actually, like, care. And be
Yeah.
like, I need to
So let
do
me
this.
actually go to the frogs, because that's maybe the better example of this.
Okay.
Frogs start out as tadpoles. You have a tadpole, and you know what a tadpole looks like, and it starts growing limbs, and then eventually it's a frog. A tadpole can regenerate a lost limb. If a tadpole loses one of those limbs as it's turning into a frog, it can grow that limb back. But once it's an adult frog, it cannot.
Huh.
And the theory there is a frog is constantly using its limbs. It is very strong limbs because it swims and it jumps, and so they're like strong, and it depends on them a lot. And it's probably not going to be able to feed itself long enough to regrow an entire arm.
Makes
But as a
sense.
tadpole, it's not using those arms.
Yeah. I get that. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So salamanders, among vertebrates, are probably the best at this. Salamanders can regenerate limbs. They can regenerate parts of their eye.
Oh.
They can regenerate parts of their heart, even.
They're hard.
Yes.
See, you just said before that if it's like a critical organ or whatever, they don't have time to regenerate it. The heart, to me, I don't know about America, but where I'm from, the heart is a pretty critical organ.
So obviously it's not going to come back from a fatal heart injury.
Okay.
But if it...
Just a little...
Yeah, and I don't have in my notes here like the particular parts of the heart, but if it lives, then it's gonna have a chance at regenerating that.
That's sweet. I
And
like that.
so for example here, I talked about tissues de-differentiating and then like into stem cells and then regrowing into something else. For salamanders, if a salamander loses the lens of its eye, the pigmented cells in the eye spring into action, and some of them de-differentiate into stem cells and then are able to grow a new lens.
Crazy.
Yes.
Because I have contacts in right now, and I wish my melanin was that proactive. You know?
Yes. Now seems like a good time to introduce our mascot for the episode.
Oh my gosh, it's time for Max. Dun, 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 Max, get ready. It's time for you. That's his theme song.
Axolotls are a kind of salamander. This is a little bit outside the scope of the episode, but it's an extremely fun fact, and so I'm going to drop it on you. Salamanders,
Like
salamanders, like frogs. Frogs have a tadpole, which is a larval state before they grow into the adult. Salamanders also have an aquatic larval state before they grow into the adult salamander. Axolotls kind of do and kind of don't.
Oh.
In nature, the axolotl that you think of is the larval aquatic form.
Right.
And it just never grows up into a terrestrial adult. It's strangely adapted in that way. But scientists have taken axolotls and under very specific lab conditions have forced them to metamorphose into that terrestrial adult, which is never seen in nature. So when they did this, it was the first time that anyone had ever seen what an adult axolotl looks like.
We're just going to pause there for a second. So you're saying that axolotls in the wild, they got the Benjamin Buttons, where they're just like babies forever.
That's not what Benjamin Button was.
I've never watched the movie. You're telling me that's not what that Brad Pitt movie's about?
Well, Benjamin Button ages in reverse.
Oh. I thought he was just a baby.
I think. I haven't watched it in a really long time. I hope I'm getting that right. I'm going to look it up right now on camera.
Because that's not a real disease, right?
It is not.
Wow, I'm going to look so stupid. I'm letting down the Zimbabwean community.
A man who ages in reverse.
Okay.
I'm glad I didn't embarrass myself and it was just you.
I edit this video, so I'm going to just... they don't need to know. So, okay. So, what made the scientists even think to... Because we don't do that with any other animal, you know what I mean? Like, how did they even know that there was a stage to be reached? And do you know how they did it?
So first of all, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this because it is outside the scope of the episode, but I know it is interesting and,
It's the fact of
it is the facts and the curious. You're curious about the facts.
Yeah.
So we knew that axolotls are salamanders. Mm-hmm. And we know that salamanders have an aquatic larval stage and a terrestrial adult stage,
I
and we just
see.
hadn't seen the terrestrial adult stage of that animal. So I don't know exactly how they did it. Obviously, it's a little bit complicated because it's something that does not occur in nature, but it has to do with sort of weaning them out of the water and onto the land. And forcing them to live on the land, and so they then undergo the bodily changes that turn them into adult salamanders.
Scientists, I feel like, either have a lot of time on their hands or like not enough time. You know, it's always like the planet's dying. We don't have enough time. We're doing our best to find a cure for this illness. We still haven't found a cure for cancer or AIDS. And then you hear that they like spent months taking an axolotl out of the water. And I'm not mad at it though, because that is kind of interesting. But it does make me wonder, like, what's happening in these labs, you know?
I want to skip back to lizards for a second.
Yes.
So obviously lizards can drop and then regrow their tails. There's a term for that, actually. It's called autotomy.
Okay.
And lizards are not the only animals that are capable of autotomy.
Autotomy.
Yes, like autonomy, but instead of the N, it's a T.
Oh, okay. Tell your neighbor autotomy.
Autotomy.
Okay.
So starfish are one of the ones who can do this. They can remove a limb to escape a predator.
Okay.
We know.
Sorry, did you say starfish?
Yes, I
I
did.
zoned out for a second and I missed that word.
Yes,
Starfish.
we know that cephalopods, like squids and octopuses, can shed an arm
True.
if they need to.
Yeah. It's the most metal thing, also.
It is. It's it is
Right?
a cool phenomenon. So lizards aren't the only. They're the most famous ones.
Right.
They're not the only things that can do that. Let's talk about fish. Fish.
We love fish in this household.
So fish are also pretty good at this. Fish can regenerate a lot of their fins.
So Finding Nemo just wouldn't have happened.
Well, that was a birth defect, right? Or was it not?
No, it was an injury. He got attacked by something, didn't he?
You're right. Did he
Or was
lose
he
it
born with
from the?
Our movie knowledge is lackluster.
Good grief.
Was he born with it?
I think it was a birth defect.
And people made fun of him for having a little fin.
Yes.
Oh, you're right. No, because his mother... No, man, because when he was in an egg,
Yeah.
the thing was attacked.
Yes, and all the other eggs were eaten.
Ooh.
I'll look it up. Fine.
So my thing is that, like, because when you say birth
did-
defect, I think, like, it was just in his genetics. Like, it was in his DNA. He was bound to have a small fin. But I'm saying he wasn't, that he was attacked by just in the egg form.
Nemo was born with a permanently damaged fin.
Okay. But it's because the eggs were attacked. It wasn't in his DNA, is what I'm trying to say. Maybe he hadn't formed the neoblasts in the egg to be able to, like, restore the fin.
Oh, I remember this. His egg got a small crack from the attack, giving him a
Yes.
smaller fin. You know,
Also, this isn't based on science. It's
yeah,
a movie
I'm
by
gonna have
Disney
to
Pixar.
fall back on the fact that children's movies aren't necessarily scientifically
They
accurate.
should
100%
be. We're gonna
of the
write to
time.
Disney after this.
Fish can regenerate their fins. Okay.
Exactly. That whole story would not have happened if he'd just grown it back.
Now, I'm going to remind you of how I said that these animals can regenerate parts if they're less important to survival.
Yes.
Fish can regenerate the olfactory center of their brain.
In their brain.
Yes. Because that's a sense that fish don't rely on very much.
Oh, I suppose because when you're in the ocean, you don't really need to be listening as much, I guess. Or do you?
Hang on a second.
No, olfactory is nose. Wow. Guys! Once again?
I really pumped up your medical knowledge as one of the first things I said,
it.
you're making me pay for that.
I don't know why you're bringing up my past. I've left it behind me. Okay,
It is scent.
take 2.
Yes.
Oh, the olfactory system, because when you're in the ocean, you don't need to smell anything.
So they do use it, but not as much as their other senses.
Fair.
So they can get by without it long enough to reobtain it through regeneration. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Some more interesting examples. Okay, first of all, a really interesting example is jellyfish can regenerate their eyes. And some of you may
They
be
have
thinking,
eyes?
do jellyfish have eyes? Some of them.
Okay.
Not all of them, some of them. And they can... They're not necessarily eyes like we would think of eyes. Consider a spider. A spider has 2 eyes that are like complex eyes that they can see things with, and most of the rest of their eyes are really photoreceptors. They're not seeing images clearly. They're seeing light and dark. They're monitoring for shadows.
Okay.
Jellyfish eyes, I think, are more like photoreceptors. So they're not as complex. So, it's easier for them to
Fair.
grow back.
And I don't think many animals are kind of like hunting for jellyfish. No one's really going like, oh, it's been a minute since I had jellyfish. Let's go get some jellyfish tonight.
Doesn't sound appetizing to
There's
you.
just not much flesh,
There's also crabs. Crabs can regenerate legs
Oh,
as well as eye stalks.
eye stalks.
Yes.
Because crabs the ones with those weird eyes, right? That do the thing.
Yes.
Oh, because that's the reason why people hated the new Little Mermaid movie. I loved it, but people said that they didn't like the crab eyes, the way they were animated.
Oh,
Did you not read that?
I didn't read that.
Yeah, I think.
I watched the movie, but I didn't
Yeah.
go reading
'Cause
about
the eyes were a
crab
little
eye
too
stalks
creepy.
as depicted in The Little Mermaid.
But, because no, is Sebastian a crab or a lobster?
You were asking the wrong person.
Okay.
Would you like me to look it up
No,
right now?
no, we've done enough today. Let's focus on. Okay, crabs can grow back their eye stalks.
Yes. Why don't we go to the very rare warm-blooded exceptions?
I'm ready for some mammals. Let's talk about these mammals. Go.
So, yes, you're correct, mammals, because I couldn't find any examples of this in birds, for example.
Oh, okay.
But I found 2 exceptions in mammals. Mm-hmm. One of them is that certain mouse species can regenerate fingertips.
Fingertips.
Yes, just the fingertip.
Just the tip.
Just the tip.
Hey.
And similarly, you can find something very close to that in human infants. Human infants have, and again,
I need to readjust for this.
I guess I should do another disclaimer here.
Yeah, don't go
They're
testing
not,
this.
And scientists have not gone testing this. This is like data from accidents that have occurred.
Yes.
Human infants have displayed the ability to regenerate fingertips as long as that amputation doesn't go past the nail bed.
Oh, the nail bed.
Yes.
That's still a significant portion of the finger, though. Can you imagine just growing? Because that's bone a little bit.
A little bit of bone, yeah.
That's wild. And also just a lot of like nerve endings and skin. And your prints. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That is bizarre.
Yes.
Do they know the cutoff age or?
So I found a couple different sources that said a couple different things.
Okay.
Some of them said infancy, and some of them said up to about puberty. So, it's not the kind of thing that we can test in a scientific setting because of ethics. So I don't know that we have a solid
Like a
cutoff
concrete-
age.
Yeah.
One other, I'm coming to the end of my material here.
Okay.
But something.
Wait, are you still on mammals? Because I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I know that you obviously need substantial tissue, but in humans, you can also regenerate your liver, like part of it.
That's true.
Did you happen to like read up more on that, or?
So I did come across, discussions of like humans can regenerate a big piece of their liver.
Yeah.
I didn't include it here because it's not an example of you regenerating types of tissues that are absent. Like it's just liver cells replacing more liver cells.
Yeah.
As
fair.
opposed, yeah.
I guess. So you make it sound so uncool, and I always thought that was the coolest thing ever. That you could just regenerate parts of your liver.
Yeah, well.
I guess starfish take the cake once more. Okay.
Planarians. Planarians are number one.
Planarians. You're right.
Starfish
you're
are
right.
number two.
Okay. All right. You were going to say something.
Yes. And again, not something I want to dive super deep into because this does get into like the hard science of this, and I don't know if we want to do that here.
I don't know if I could cope. Yeah. I couldn't even remember olfactory, so.
But it's really interesting how, say you have a starfish.
Yeah.
The starfish's cells, its genetic code knows what it has to replace and where everything goes.
Right.
So there's like a sequence that these tissues have to go in order to like work right. Like the organs go on the inside and the skin is on the outside, and like there's a blueprint. There's a blueprint that it has to follow to regrow these tissues, to regrow this organism, and there are specific genes that are activated in case of these injuries.
Crazy.
That spring in action, start creating the proteins that are needed in order to make all this happen.
Yeah.
And the specific gene involved in, creating and reading that blueprint to make sure that everything goes where it needs to go is called the sonic hedgehog gene.
That's fun.
Yes.
Why is it called the sonic hedgehog gene?
So I don't remember exactly why. It's part of a family of genes called hedgehog genes.
Okay.
And most of the rest of the members of that family are named after like actual real hedgehogs.
Oh,
and they were
cute.
just like being clever when they said also there's a
The
sonic
one.
hedgehog.
That's adorable.
I don't remember exactly why it's called hedgehog. Hedgehog.
Oh, okay.
They called it Sonic because they wanted to be clever and funny.
Okay.
But yeah.
That's adorable.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Does that conclude all the facts?
That's all the facts that I have prepared for you today. Do you have any other questions?
No, I think you've given me a lot to just mull and think about, and also just revisit a lot of my anatomy notes and watch the Benjamin Buttons movie. I think I have a lot of homework, but I don't think I'll be able to look at, starfish or even babies the same way ever again. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to brighten your world and expand your horizons.
Thanks. You satiated my curiosity.
That's what I do. We can't promise that we'll be able to get to every question that other people ask us.
Fair.
But if you have a question, let us know.
Yeah.
We'll do our best.
Drop it in the comments. What do you want us to talk about next? Is there a kooky, crazy animal that you've been curious about? How did you think of this episode? Let us know. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time here, wherever you get your podcasts. Social media, probably. Yes, Instagram, definitely. Follow us on Instagram at... I'll insert it here because I don't remember our handle, but it'll be in here.
Everything's brand new.
Everything is so new.
We'll be a little. We'll get better at this.
Yeah, 2024, new year, new us, but it takes a while, so it's fine.
Yes. Well, I've been Ken.
I've been Valerie. Please share, like, comment, subscribe. Subscriptions obviously help us out, help us grow, and do all sorts of awesome things. And yeah, see you guys next time.